Greetings, booktubers, and welcome back to Grammaticus Books. Today is December 1st. It's Friday. I'm going to try to get this up by Saturday morning, hopefully. And since it's December, I've got some holiday lighting, but I'm noticing on the video that the green lights are looking very blue instead of green. Trust me, these actually are green. This is red and green for festive lighting. I just think my coloring on my editor here is not the best. But anyway, we've got a really good one going for you guys today. We're looking at Conan the Barbarian, and we're looking at the different endings that have been written by different authors and trying to determine which one of those endings is the most accurate, most genuine, and most satisfactory ending for the Conan saga of Conan the Barbarian. And I know what you're saying. There's only one true ending, and that's the one that was written by Robert E. Howard himself. All the others are pretenders to the throne, so to speak. And I would tend to agree with that position, except when you look at that position closely, you look at Robert E. Howard himself and you look at his history, there are questions as to whether that is the true and accurate ending to Conan the Barbarian, if it's the one that's the most satisfactory, or even the one that Robert E. Howard would have wanted himself. But before we get there, in order to qualify for this consideration, in order to be a writer, we're not just letting any Tom, Dick, or Harry throw his hat in the ring in here. We're only looking at writers for this contest, for this examination, who are OG Conan writers, old gangster writers, people who've had both feet firmly planted in the Conan writing pool for a very long time, at least from 1970 or before, in order to be considered for having the chops, the resume, the background, and the gravitas to be able to authentically weigh in on this matter. And when we define it like that, it immediately narrows the field to three authors or creators, and three different endings. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. The first one we've got to do is you got to go with Robert E. Howard. You got to take down your go-over analysis of his writing first. To do anything else would be absolute heresy. So Robert E. Howard himself, the man who created Conan himself, the man who, by some accounts, even created the entire field of sword and sorcery. What is his ending to the Conan saga? Well, you've got two potential stories that give you an indication of how Robert E. Howard was going to end this. The first one is Hour of the Dragon, with my beat-up copy of Hour of the Dragon there, which is a full-length novel, his only full-length novel on Conan. And the other one is in Phoenix on the Sword, which was the very first short story that Robert E. Howard wrote about Conan, and it's contained in the Coming of Conan the Cimmerian in this Del Rey edition. Now, both of these stories are basically have the same identical ending. They've got Conan, who is risen up and he's become the king of Aquilonia. The only difference between these two is that in Phoenix on the Sword, he appears to be a bachelor still, and at the end of Hour of the Dragon, he has taken a queen, Queen Zenobia, and now he's married with a queen. But otherwise, they both have him as the king of Aquilonia, which on the face of it, I understand would seem like the perfect ending to the Conan saga. He's come out of the hills of Conan, of Cimmeria. He's become a rogue, a thief, and then a freebooter, a wanderer, an adventurer, a buccaneer, a pirate captain, a captain of mercenary companies, a general in charge of armies, and then finally becomes the king of Aquilonia, the jewel of the Hyborian Age. And it just seems like the perfect ending to the Conan story until you look at it close, until you look at Robert E. Howard's history as well. Because you have to take into account that Robert E. Howard passed away in 1936 at the age of 30. So he's a young man when he dies. Now he's transitioning away from Conan stories at this time over into Westerns when he tragically takes his life. But had he not taken his life, almost assuredly he would have continued to write some Conan stories. And I think at that point, it legitimately opens the door to consider whether or not this is how Robert E. Howard himself would have ended the saga. Or would he have had a different ending, one that he thought was better than Conan as king? So I think it does open the door to that conversation. And another insight into whether this is the best ending for Conan, or if it isn't, is the writings of Robert E. Howard himself, where he's talking through Conan with his pen, which Robert E. Howard is crafting this or typing it on a typewriter, as to whether or not this is where Conan wanted to be. And if you look at the writings for Phoenix on the Sword, here's what Robert E. Howard himself has to say about Conan being the king of Aquilonia. And this is Conan talking to his advisor Prospero in the throne room at the start of Phoenix on the Sword. And Conan says, "These matters of statecraft weary me, as all the fighting I have done never did. It seems ages since I have had a horse between my knees." And then he goes on a little later to say, "In the old free days, all I wanted was a sharp and straight path to my enemies, and now no paths are straight, and my sword is useless." And I think that's really telling as to the fact that maybe this is not the ending that Robert E. Howard had in mind for his hero at the end of these stories. And even when you look at Hour of the Dragon, once Conan is captured and has to escape from captivity and then fight his way back to the throne, it's when he's not on the throne that when he's at his best and he's at his happiest and he's back adventuring in his old style. And then at the end, he does regain the throne. But I would argue from the writings of Robert E. Howard there and the way that this novel plays out, Hour of the Dragon, that this may not be the ending that Robert E. Howard wanted or the best ending for Conan, for the ending of the Conan saga. So what's then is next? What can we consider? Well, number 2 on the list is the king of pastiche himself, and that is L. Sprague de Camp. With a little help with Lynn Carter, L. Sprague de Camp writes an ending to the Conan saga in this book right here, Conan the Isles. So L. Sprague de Camp brings Conan out of obscurity, for which we owe him some gratitude, but then he takes all the Conan stories and he arranges them in chronological order and then publishes them in chronological order. And I'll just run through them real quick. Those come out in the Lancer Ace editions, and you've got Conan, the first one. There's so many of these things, I don't have enough room on my table. I just got to throw them on the floor. And then there's Conan of Samaria, Conan the Freebooter, Conan the Wanderer, Conan the Adventurer, love that cover, Conan the Buccaneer. There's a cover you don't see a whole lot. It's a Frazetta cover that doesn't get a whole lot of love, but I like it. Conan the Warrior, Conan the Usurper, Conan the Conqueror, same thing as Hour of the Dragon, another copy of Hour of the Dragon, Conan the Avenger, Conan of Aquilonia, and then Conan of the Isles, Conan of the Isles, Conan of the Isles, and Conan of the Isles. Why do I have 4 copies of Conan of the Isles? Lord only knows. I don't know how I have 4 copies, but somehow I wound up with 4 copies of Conan of the Isles. But L. Sprague de Camp puts this one last. This is his chronological end that he came up with a little help from Lynn Carter, to the end of the Conan saga. And just a couple of spoilers here going forward with this story. It starts off with Conan as king of Aquilonia, and a threat comes to the kingdom. And in order to address the threat, he turns the kingdom over to his son Con, and then he goes out to try to stop this threat to the kingdom. And when he's getting ready to head out, he's talking to Prospero again. And this is what L. Sprague de Camp has Conan say to Prospero. I'm pretty sure it's Prospero. "A pox upon this business of kinging it," he thought. "It drained every last drop of juices from a man's tissues, leaving him a querulous hair splitter, without enough red blood in his veins to swing a broadsword." So L. Sprague de Camp, he gets it. He fully gets it that Conan on the throne is not necessarily the best ending for Conan the Barbarian. Sitting there listening to advisors and supplicants all day long and using a quill pen instead of a sword isn't a satisfactory ending to Conan the Barbarian. And so he has him relinquish the throne. He goes out and addresses the threat. And then L. Sprague de Camp's solution to how to finish the saga is he has Conan board a ship. They sail this ship across the Western Sea, and they land in Mexico, and Conan becomes the Mexican Aztec god Quetzalcoatl. I kid you not, that's how this book ends. And it's like, L. Sprague de Camp, you were doing so well. You were doing so well. And then you kind of went off the rails at the end and had him go to Mexico to become Quetzalcoatl. So I say the number two ending there is it's a potential, but I think Conan in Mexico as Quetzalcoatl is a little questionable. So what's number 3 then? So number 3 And the final entry in our consideration here in our little contest for the saga to end, the best ending to the saga of Conan the Barbarian, is Barry Windsor Smith in Freebooters. Now, Barry Windsor Smith is certainly somebody who has the resume and the pedigree and the background to weigh in on this matter. And this is Barry Windsor Smith's conclusion to the saga of Conan the Barbarian. Now, I know what you're saying, that this is not, in fact, Conan the Barbarian. This is actually Axis from his storyteller line. Well, if you go back and you watch my last video, where I lay a foundation with a preponderance of the evidence to show that, in fact, this actually is Conan the Barbarian in his end or his later days, in his retirement days, looking a lot stouter of girth, but it's absolutely Conan the Barbarian. So this is Barry Windsor Smith's take on Conan the Barbarian. And what's his take? Barry Windsor Smith gets it as well. He understands that Conan on the throne, Conan sitting in a throne room with a heavy iron crown upon his brow, weighing down upon his troubled brow, is not the best ending. So he has Conan retire from the kingdom. Actually, starts already out of the kingdom. And he's gone down south to sunny Shadizar the Wicked. Exotic Shadizar, full of palm trees, sun, beautiful women in scantily clothes, to open his own bar and his brothel, where he's running a bar and brothel in Shadizar the Wicked and just having a grand old time. It's sort of Shadizar the Wicked is the Hyborian equivalent of Miami, Florida. And I think this is actually a pretty decent ending to it. It has Conan in his element, doing the things that he's like. He's overeating, he's over drinking, he's having sun and fun. And he goes out every now and then. He tends bar with his friends. He is surrounded by beautiful women in his establishment. When things get boring, he starts up bar fights to spicing up his life a little bit. And when that's not spicy enough, he'll grab a city guard, throw him down on the ground, sit on his head, and cut the cabbage. You know, the last time he did that up in Aquilonia, Queen Zenobia had him sleep on the couch for 6 months, and the guards never looked at him the same after that. Down in Shadizar the Wicked, that's just another Monday. You know, on with life you go. And if you're, not happy, he's not happy doing that and needs even a little more adventure, you can always go out and rob the Caliph of Shadizar with your buddies. And when you're not robbing the Caliph of Shadizar, you can hang out with your riffraff friends and do whatever you want. So if only we had like a portrait, a painting of Conan in there, and whatever the lifestyle he is, with his thumbs up saying, yep, this is the one that I like, that would just be the cherry on top of the cake. But that is Barry Windsor Smith's solution to it, and I think it's a pretty good one. And I think it's a pretty good one because there comes a time when the jewels cease to sparkle, when gold loses its luster, when the throne room becomes a prison. And the only thing left is Conan's love for the wild. And that's it. I hope you guys like it. If you've got a different take on it, please put it down in the comment section below. I would love to hear it. If you think one of the others is a better ending to the saga, or if you've got another ending to the saga you're aware of, I always love to hear about it in the comments section. But that's it for today. I think I've rambled on long enough about Conan the Barbarian here with Barry Windsor Smith and the Freebooters, and Robert E. Howard and L. Sprague de Camp. So on that note, take care, be safe, and I'll catch you guys in the future.